The arrangement. Sophie Chen adjusted her camera settings, capturing the final shots of the wedding reception as golden hour faded into dusk. The bride and groom swayed on the dance floor, lost in each other's eyes. She smiled behind her viewfinder, momentarily forgetting the stack of bills waiting at her apartment and the notice from her landlord threatening eviction. "Gorgeous work," the mother of the bride commented, peeking over Sophie's shoulder at the preview screen. "You have a real talent for capturing love." Sophie thanked her with practiced warmth, not mentioning the irony. She photographed love stories for a living, yet her own romantic history consisted of a string of disappointments with men who couldn't handle her unpredictable schedule and artistic temperament. After packing her equipment, she trudged to her 10-year-old sedan, mentally calculating how short she'd still be on rent after this gig paid out. Her photography studio downtown was her dream, but the rising costs were crushing that dream 1 month at a time. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, May. "You're still coming to help with Dad tomorrow, right? His physical therapy appointment is at 10. Sophie sighed. Since their father's stroke 6 months ago, the sisters had been sharing caretaking responsibilities. Another responsibility, another commitment, another reason her business was suffering. She loved her father fiercely, but sometimes the weight of it all felt suffocating. "One miracle," she whispered to the evening air. "Just one would be nice." Across town, in a glass-walled penthouse office, Ethan Reed stared at the email from his business partner, Julian. The message was clear. Their potential investors from Horizon Capital were hesitant to back their expansion because they preferred to work with stable family men rather than disconnected bachelors. The fact that Ethan's last 3 relationships had ended in high-profile breakups didn't help his image. "This is ridiculous," Ethan muttered, running a hand through his dark hair. "They should be investing in our technology, not my personal life." His assistant, Vivian, raised an eyebrow. "These old-school investors care about character. After that article about your, Playboy lifestyle went viral last month." Ethan groaned. One exaggerated tabloid story about him attending a charity gala with twins had spiraled into a full character assassination. "The investors are bringing their families to the retreat next week," Vivian continued. "Everyone will have partners there." "So I'll bring a date," Ethan shrugged. "No offense, but your usual type of date won't help." Vivian's bluntness was why he kept her around. "You need someone who seems, substantial. Someone who makes you appear grounded." Ethan frowned. At 34, he'd built his cybersecurity firm from nothing into a tech powerhouse, but meaningful relationships had always eluded him. Childhood in the foster system had left him wary of attachment, and success had only surrounded him with people attracted to his wealth rather than himself. "What I need," he said slowly, "is someone to play a role. Someone convincing, but professional. Someone with absolutely no connection to my actual life." Vivian looked alarmed. "You mean hire someone? That's practical," Ethan finished. "Find someone who needs money but won't get emotionally involved. Someone intelligent enough to be believable, but desperate enough to keep our arrangement confidential." The next morning, Sophie was adjusting the lights in her small studio when a sleek black car pulled up outside. A woman in an impeccable suit emerged, surveying the modest storefront before entering. "Sophie Chen?" she asked. "I'm Vivian Park, assistant to Ethan Reed. He has a business proposition for you." Sophie frowned. "I'm not interested in corporate photography right now. I have too many weddings booked." Vivian smiled thinly. "This isn't about photography. Mr. Reed is willing to pay $20,000 for 1 week of your time. He would like to meet to discuss the details if you're interested." Sophie's fingers tightened around her camera. $20,000 would cover her studio rent for months, pay off her car, and help with her father's mounting medical bills. "What exactly would this week entail?" she asked cautiously. "That's for Mr. Reed to explain," Vivian replied, handing her a business card with an address. "Tonight, 8 p.m. Come alone and tell no one." After Vivian left, Sophie stared at the card. Something about this felt wrong, yet the amount was impossible to dismiss. With trembling fingers, she texted her sister that she'd be unavailable that evening. Sometimes miracles came with strings attached. The question was whether she was desperate enough to pull them.
Unexpected truths. The storm hits on the 5th day of their retreat. What began as light mountain rain quickly evolved into sheets of water hammering against the lodge windows, wind howling through the pines. By mid-afternoon, the power flickered ominously. "The roads down the mountain are already flooding," Julian announced to the gathered guests in the main lodge. "Management assures me we're safe here, but no one will be going anywhere until this passes." Sophie felt a vibration against her hip and pulled out her phone to find 3 missed calls from her sister. Stepping away from the group, she dialed back with trembling fingers. "Me? What's wrong?" "Dad's in the hospital." Her sister's voice crackled through poor reception. "His blood pressure spiked dangerously high. They're monitoring him, but—" The call cut out as the lodge lights died completely. Sophie stared at her phone, the no-service message glaring in the dim emergency lighting. Panic rose in her chest as she tried repeatedly to reconnect, each attempt failing. "Sophie?" Ethan appeared beside her. "The generator should kick in soon. Are you all right?" "My father," she managed, her voice tight. "He's in the hospital and now I can't reach me. I need to get back to the city." Ethan's expression shifted instantly from concern to determination. "Come with me." He led her through the darkened hallways to the resort manager's office where emergency protocols were being implemented. "I need helicopter evacuation," Ethan stated without preamble to the startled manager. "My girlfriend's father is in critical condition." "Sir, in this weather, no aircraft can safely—" "Find me someone willing to try once there's a break in the storm," Ethan interrupted, laying his credit card on the desk. "Price is no object." The manager hesitated, then nodded. "I'll make some calls on our satellite phone." Sophie felt lightheaded, overwhelmed by Ethan's immediate response and her fear for her father. When they returned to their suite, she collapsed onto the sofa, hands shaking too badly to even hold her phone. "Here," Ethan said, draping a blanket around her shoulders. "The resort has emergency satellite communications. I've arranged for someone to get a message to your sister." "Why are you doing this?" Sophie whispered. "This isn't part of our arrangement." Ethan knelt in front of her, his usual guarded expression replaced with raw sincerity. "Because it matters to you." The simplicity of his answer broke something inside her. Tears she'd been fighting spilled over, and without thinking, Sophie leaned forward into his chest. His arms wrapped around her instantly, solid and secure. "I should have been there," she said between shaky breaths. "I took this job and left me to handle everything alone." "You took this job to help your family," Ethan corrected gently. "You've talked about your father every day, how you're working to afford his care, his medication." Sophie pulled back slightly. "You were listening?" "Of course I was listening." His hands moved to cup her face, thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "You see me, Sophie, the real you, not just the woman playing a part." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. In the dim emergency lighting, with rain lashing the windows, the careful boundaries they'd established seemed to dissolve. When his lips met hers, it wasn't the practiced public display they'd perfected for their audience. It was questioning, tender, real. Sophie knew she should pull away. This wasn't in their contract. This complicated everything. Instead, her fingers threaded through his hair, drawing him closer as the kiss deepened. 3 hours later, the storm temporarily calmed. True to his word, Ethan had arranged for a helicopter pilot willing to make the risky flight. As they stood on the rain-soaked helipad, he held both her hands. I'm coming with you, he stated, leaving no room for argument. You can't, Sophie replied. You're investors. Julian can handle them. This deal isn't worth anything if... He stopped himself, searching her eyes. Let me be there for you. Not as part of our arrangement. As someone who cares. The helicopter blades whirred to life above them, drowning out any possibility of further conversation. Sophie simply nodded, allowing him to help her aboard. At the hospital, they found me dozing in an uncomfortable chair beside their father's bed. The doctors reported that his condition had stabilized. The crisis had passed, but it had been a warning sign they couldn't ignore. You must be the boyfriend, Mee said when Ethan introduced himself, her eyebrows raising questioningly at Sophie. Funny, my sister hasn't mentioned you before. It's complicated, Sophie replied, avoiding Ethan's gaze. Throughout the night, Ethan remained by her side, fetching coffee, speaking with doctors, and even making arrangements for a specialist to review her father's case. When Mr. Chen woke briefly around dawn, Ethan stepped outside to give the family privacy. He seems like one of the good ones, his father said weakly, watching Ethan's silhouette through the door window. Sophie squeezed his hand. It's not what you think, Dad. But what exactly was it? The question haunted her as she watched Ethan charm the nursing staff, as he placed a gentle hand on her back when exhaustion overwhelmed her, as he looked at her father's medical charts with genuine concern. On the third day at the hospital, with her father improving steadily, the bubble burst. Ethan's phone rang repeatedly until he finally stepped into the hallway to answer. When he returned, his expression had hardened back into the businessman she'd first met. Julian says the investors are getting restless. They want to finalize terms before leaving the resort. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. I need to get back. Of course, Sophie said, the strange spell of the past days breaking. You should go. We had a deal, and I've already disrupted it enough. Sophie. No, really, it's fine. She interrupted briskly. My father's stable. Mission accomplished. You were the attentive, caring boyfriend. I'm sure the Thorntons will be suitably impressed with your character. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Sophie replied, suddenly exhausted. I agreed to pretend for money. You're paying for a performance. Let's not confuse the situation with whatever this became. The warmth drained from his eyes. Right, the arrangement. I almost forgot. Before leaving, he placed an envelope on the side table. Your payment, as agreed, plus extra for the unexpected expansion. Sophie didn't touch it. Goodbye, Ethan. He paused at the door, looking back as if to say something more, then simply nodded and walked away. That night, as Mee slept in the hospital recliner, Sophie opened the envelope. Inside was the promised amount, but also a note. Some things can't be bought or sold. When you're ready to talk about those things, call me. E. She crumpled the note in her fist, telling herself the ache in her chest was simply exhaustion.
Echoes of yesterday.